Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Courtney, and I am a regional parent liaison with Adopt for Life, and I have the privilege of moderating tonight's discussion. Chantal will be off screen monitoring the live chat, so feel free to, whether you're watching live or on replay, to ask any questions you may have, and we'll do our best to fit them in. Please keep in mind that our discussion is being live streamed on our public page. So that means anything being shared in the comments is public. So please be careful not to share any identifying information rather. So with that in mind, our choice and language communicates how we value the adoption constellation and all of its members. The contextual history and power of words matter, and honoring the perspectives of those with lived experience should guide our choice about words and language. Tonight, we're going to go beyond the definitions and candidly, openly, and honestly discuss the true meaning of these words from a lived experience lens. We are honored to have Ashley Bach, Troy Elleston, Cathy Murphy, Michelle Young, and Julie Despaties offer their insights, knowledge, and experiences. We hope you find the discussion engaging and that you too will join this important conversation about the significance, impact, and power of words. So I would like to just go around and quickly have everyone introduce themselves on our panel tonight. So we'll start with Cathy.
Thanks so much, Courtney. It's a pleasure to be with you all tonight. My name's Cathy Murphy, and I'm the Executive Director at the Adoption Council of Canada. I've had the privilege of working with children, youth, and families for about 30 years in social services. And I'm also the proud parent of 2 children who joined our family through adoption, who are now young adults. They're 25 and 30. And it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us. And Troy?
Thanks, Courtney. And hi, everyone. My name is Troy Alliston. I'm a former youth in care who has thankfully achieved permanency through my second foster home. I currently work in the fintech space, and prior to that, I have remained involved as a youth ambassador to multiple organizations, from the Children's Aid Foundation of Canada to other mentoring organizations, where I've tried to add to the conversation around young people and try to sort of educate the public on certain issues that affect youth in care. So I'm happy to be here, and I hope that you all enjoy the discussion tonight.
We're really glad to have you joining us. Michelle?
Thanks, Courtney. So my name is Michelle Young, and I am one of the service directors at Children's Aid in London. I also fortunate to oversee some Indigenous units, a first Black African Canadian team, and a county team. I've been in child welfare for over 20 years now. So I also am very happy to be doing equity work at our agency and throughout the province as well. So I'm thrilled to be here this evening.
That's so wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. Ashley, we'd love to hear from you next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Bach. I'm a member of the Mishkiokamongo Ojibwe Nation, and I'm a former youth in care as well as an adoptee. My education background is actually in environmental science, so I've grown into being an advocate for youth in and from care with Youth in Care Canada. I'm the past president of that organization. I'm also a member of the Anishinaabe-Oski Nations Oshkosh Council, so it's the Youth Council and the territories of Treaty 9, and the Ontario portion of Treaty 5 is what we represent. So thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. And Julie, last but not least.
Good evening, Courtney, and hi, everyone. My name is Julie Defensie, and I am the founder and executive director at Adopt for Life. I was inspired and mobilized to found this parent-to-parent support network after we grew our family through welcoming 3 older children. They were 8, 11, and 13 years old, and it's almost 9 years now. So I've got all big grown-up adults almost with me. So I'm delighted to be here and talking about language matters. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So with that, we'll hop right in. Our first word to discuss this evening is permanency. So we have a definition here from the OACIS that describes permanency as an enduring family relationship that is safe and meant to last a lifetime. The child or youth has a sense of belonging and affiliation to a family or extended family with significant community connections and provides for physical, emotional, social, cognitive, and spiritual well-being. Permanency can include kinship care, customary care, legal guardianship, and adoption. For any of these forms of permanency to be necessary, though, means there was first a loss. So loss is the beginning of any permanency journey for all involved, and it's also the issue that unites us. So we'd love to hear if you could share from your experience with permanency and loss, how that has shaped the meaning of permanency for you personally. And if we could start with Ashley, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Courtney. I guess like to start off, like a little bit about my background. I was apprehended at birth. So like when I was in the hospital, that's when I was placed into care. So like there was a loss there, but I don't actually remember it because I was I was like a newborn, and like I can't access those memories, at least in my brain. So the first time that I really remember and realize that I wasn't with like a family that was supposed to be like my what would be called like a forever family was when one of my foster friends, Brandon, was house hopped, and I think I was about 3 then. We have a picture of ourselves together saying goodbye, and he got into his car with his social worker, and they drove off, and that's when I realized I was like, I'm never gonna see him again. I guess I wonder if that's like what's happening to me too. And yeah, I was about 3 years old then, so I guess and I guess I didn't know at the time that like what I was afraid of not having was like permanency. So I guess I was like afraid that I was also gonna be moved around, that I was gonna end up like switching homes, never seeing my friends again. And that's a really young age to realize that, like 3 years old is like you're still like a toddler. I mean, I was in preschool, but like you're still trying to form your like life and your personality and everything then. So I guess like with that in mind, like I did get adopted by a non-Indigenous family, and that was also like while I was adopted, it was very clear to me that I could also be placed back into the system. And it like I imagine it's not really like that for people who are who are born into their family and like being placed back into the system or being placed into the system at all. It often doesn't come up. So I guess for me, like the meaning of permanency, it includes like a safe and loving and permanent home. But also like at least as like First Nations youth, I think permanency also has to include that connection to like your culture and your community, as well as your traditional territories and your language. And that was something that I really didn't have when I was placed into care and when I was adopted.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Ashley. I'm wondering, Troy, if you wanted to share some thoughts about what that means for you.
For sure. Thanks, Courtney. And just to add to what Ashley said, for me, I grew up in a single parent household. So, single mother was from a Jamaican background, grew up without a father. And then, of course, I came into care when I was age 10. And so I think, the conversation of, thinking about permanency for me has certainly been an interesting journey. I consider myself certainly lucky because, again, I grew up in a Jamaican household, but in my second foster home, I was sort of introduced to kind of a Guyanese culture, which is still kind of West Indian, different, but still West Indian. And so, a lot of the sort of the ideologies and the religious aspects and certain things that I think I was used to in my sort of previous life, I was introduced or as reintroduced into that through my second foster home. So it wasn't too much of a stretch for me in terms of not relating to culture or anything like that. I know a lot of young people struggle with that in terms of being placed in homes that don't really match what they were used to. They have to learn things all over again. They have to reconnect with folks that they really can't relate to in terms of language and culture, and religion and other aspects, but I think for me it really goes back to the definition of what does it mean to be, to have a sense of belonging, and what does it mean to have a family. I think permanency in general has allowed for many young people to sort of decentralize the concept of family. For some young people who don't have access to their birth family or their cousins or grandparents, they consider really close friends family, right? And so reevaluating the way that I've had to look at the people who are close to me in my life and what that means to me in terms of who can I trust when I'm talking about something personal, or when I was in high school, my foster parent showing up for like a game or a talent show or something like that. You really build those connections, hopefully. And so for me, I think it's allowed me to sort of reevaluate what family means to me. I think that permanency brings a sense of belonging. And with that comes with, the language and the titles of what it means, to have a family, what it means to have a parent. It could be a guardian, it could be a mom or dad, it could be a foster mom, foster dad. For me, in my second foster home, I always called my parents mom and dad. So, that I think that reduced a lot of barriers for me in the household. But yeah, I think it's different for every young person. And in the past, I've actually, even when you sort of bring up adoption, I've actually helped to educate adults who often adopt young people who age out of the care system. So when you look at how language affects that, you definitely get into a bigger discussion, because there are cases where young people don't have as stable a connection with their birth family as they would with a foster parent, and then again an adopted parent. So it gets into a lot of technicalities, but for me, that's been my experience, and I think I'm lucky and blessed to have sort of made those strong connections, while aging out of care.
Right. What really stood out for me was belonging, that sense of belonging. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to add to the conversation around permanency and what it means for them?
I just wanted to say that I think it's so important to listen to youth and that they really define what permanency means for them. It could be lifelong connections. Definitely it is for some youth that we work with. It could be customary caregivers. It could be kinship caregivers. It could be adoption. It could be the family that they choose, family of choice, some people call it. And I think that that's the important piece, that youth really define what that looks like for them and the importance of that. But to go back to what both Troy and Ashley said, that piece of belonging and the sense of community and just knowing that somebody is there for you is so important.
Absolutely. Michelle, we can't hear you, sorry.
I muted myself just in case someone jumped in. But what stood out for me was, Troy, when you were talking about like the permanency for those who've aged out. So I think extending what that is, because I think a lot of times if children or youth end up having to come into care, it's like, okay, if there isn't permanency by this age, then the discussion's almost done.
Right.
And I always say to people, well, where do they go when they're 25 or 23? Like, I remember when I left home after, going to university, I was fortunate enough to stay in my home with my mother. And well, when I went off, to Toronto, leaving London, it was like, well, I'm going home for Christmas. I said, well, where are they going? Because I think people get stuck in their mind that they forget that it's not just about when they're a child or youth growing up, that everybody needs that same thing we're talking about, a sense of belonging, your chosen family, or where will you go when certain holidays come, or where do you go when you need advice or support or to celebrate life or struggling? Who's that person? Who's that place? Where's that home place? So I think that's huge for people to really understand and think about, that we do have youth who age out without any permanency. And the thought is then I think what you're doing, Troy, is how do we still get that? Because they've got another, I don't know, 80 plus years to live. So it'd be nice
Right.
if they could experience that as well and have that. And we know how important that is to just our mental health and everything.
Absolutely. Julie, I see you unmuting, sorry.
So maybe what I'd like to add is, and I was hearing it from both of you, is when permanency is the connection, the attachment that we have with a person. And it doesn't matter if it's a neighbor or a coach or the place where we go. So I think that we as a society have to do better in helping you maintain those attachments from the get-go, keeping the track records. I remember one of my babysitter when I was very little, I was able to go back to it because it was somebody that was in my community, right? So it's kind of really nice. And I think that we have to do better for you, because the stronger connections you have with those attachments that are meaningful, the stronger the feeling of having that support around you will also be in that permanency. And permanency, family is just, there's somebody who says it very well. Cheyenne Ratman says, family is a verb, and I totally agree with it. It's who you want to live with and bring it into your life. And people will gravitate, or you will gravitate to those who are meaningful to you based on what you need at the time that you need. And so I think we need to do better by you guys, by making sure that those connections are being retained along the way.
Absolutely. And I think what you said was important is who gets to decide what's a meaningful relationship, right? It should be the youth. Wonderful. Okay, so our next word, well, it's not one word, but is birth parent, first parent, parent of origin. So, sorry, we often hear from our community of adoptive parents and caregivers. They're wondering about how to address a child or youth's parents and the perceived need to distinguish between these relationships and a child's adoptive family. So I wanted for us to discuss the history of these terms and why we use them, if they're meaningful to those touched by adoption, or are they social constructs? And then before we start this conversation, I just want to acknowledge that we are without the voice of this part for today. So it's our hope to have representation across the adoption constellation for the panel, and we'll continue to search out opportunities to listen and to share viewpoints of birth parents and first parents so that we can all continue to grow and learn from each other. So if you're watching this from that lens and you feel comfortable adding your thoughts, we would welcome you to and hold space for you. So with that in mind, I'm just wondering if there's anyone in particular who may be interested to start this conversation. Cathy, do you have any thoughts here?
Sure. Well, again, I think it's so important, the language that we use and model. So depending on the age at which your children join your family, you're going to be talking about that. And whether your child has, Ashley put it so well that she doesn't consciously remember. So do they have memories? Most of us are part of open adoptions. So these are ongoing relationships that are going to happen. And it's really important that everybody feels comfortable with the terms that you're using. But again, like most of the youth, I think it's so important to listen to our children and youth. And for most people, this isn't going to be a big deal, whether it's Mummy Jane, if that's the first name, whether it's Jane, whatever it is that the child feels comfortable with for birth mother's name and birth father's name is really what you need to honor. It's about the relationships. And I think sometimes as adoptive parents, we need to be very open to our own feelings and the fact that there's a journey for this. So our insecurities we need to deal with, because this really isn't about our needs. It's about the needs of our children and the relationships that they have ongoing and what those mean to them. And so what people are called, while that's significant, the relationships are much more important, and how we honor those and how we really embrace our child's family of origin and ensure that they're included in our family and that we have that context and that commitment. And again, our kids lead us through that, right?
They do, absolutely. Michelle, you kind of look like you have something you want to say. No?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
No, I think Cathy did a really good job, and so did you, Courtney, just sort of centering that, because at the end of the day, because I have worked with some parents who are adopting, and the name and the this, what are they going to call them? If they call them mommy and call me mommy, it's confusing. And really the only person that it seems to be confusing for is really the adults, because kids just flow with, this makes sense, this is my reality. I think of some friends who they're two moms, one's mama, one's mommy. That's like, it doesn't matter. It's because I think it comes back to Cathy talking about the insecurity of the adults, right? That someone else gets to have this title. And so maybe the insecurity is, then does that somehow displace me?
Sure.
And so I think about, if a child was adopted, still has contact with the parents who created them, and then let's just say that the adoptive family, there's a breakup. Can you imagine how many mummies there could be? And daddies, people that have these titles? You could have literally of that kind of permutation, you could possibly have like 4 or 5. And some might get just the official, some might get the last name, the first name attached to it.
Yeah.
Or different permutations that we have of all of those names. And really that's what it comes back to, I think, just like Cathy said, to follow the lead of the child, but also to check yourself as to what is this really about? Because at
Sure.
the end of the day, that child or youth knows who does what for them and when. Do you know what I mean? Like they know that. And then the pressure that will put on them, and how that'll be a challenging situation for them to try and negotiate, trying not to hurt certain people's feelings if they slip up
Sure.
and
Yeah.
say something.
Yeah. And we don't want to put that sort of pressure on the child or youth. Absolutely. Julie.
I was just going to add, I'll own this, because when we first grew our family and our children came home, I didn't know better. And so, we were talking about bird families, or, and it just started to sound really wrong. It just rang wrong. And I was like, and so we started to use, when we were talking about their parents, or we're talking about their parents, it was, when your mom or your dad, and it doesn't take anything away from us. It doesn't make me less of a mom or a parent, or us less as a family. It just makes us, our children's parents are no longer with us anymore now. But when I have big decisions, and when there's big things that are happening, I often try to think about their parents, and really try to bring in, their connections to their children, and helping guiding the decision. So it's, and I wish they would be with us, because we would channel them, because they are part of our family, irregardless. Their pictures are on the wall, mine is not. My children, some call me Julie, and some call me mom, not mommy. But it doesn't, again, make me less of a parent. And I think, to your point, Cathy, it's all about our own insecurities. And once we navigate through this, we allow our children to feel and connect and talk about us and about their parents just the same way, right? So I think it's really important.
Yeah, that's a good point. Ashley, do you have any thoughts around this topic here?
Yeah, a bit. So like my I use the terms like adoptive parents, and they referred to the parents who gave birth to me as my biological parents. And my adoptive parents also kept fostering once they adopted me. So as far as I can think back, like most of my my foster siblings were told yeah, those were your biological parents, and then they were to call my adoptive parents mom and dad. And I guess when I think about it too, I honestly never really thought about it until we were doing the rehearsal for this panel 2 weeks ago, and Michelle said that thing about how sometimes it can create a hierarchy, or it's yes, it's a way to distinguish one set of parents from the other set of parents, but in some ways it does create that sort of hierarchy, and maybe it comes from insecurities or like just not being sure of how to communicate to other people. Like I know I baffle my friends, and I don't know, in elementary school and like high school, like teachers, they were just like confused all the time. But like I always knew who I was talking about. When I look back too, like all my siblings knew who I was talking about, and they knew who they were talking about. So I think it is really an adult issue. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It is. And I come from a blended family with step parents and step siblings. And I have two brothers named Daniel, and I have a brother named Brian and a brother named Ryan. And I had a lot of fun confusing people about my family story when I was a kid. Troy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you all said so far. I think, you know, in my family, for a long time, it was, you know, the biological son of my foster parents. It was me, so I was the foster child, and then it was one of our other brothers who got adopted. So for a long time, it was, you know, I was a foster child, and then there was someone adopted, and then it was like a biological sibling. So three different that dynamic playing out. And I think, again, yeah, I mean, I would agree with the narrative that it's oftentimes less confusing for like young people find ways on how to address different folks in their, I would call it, extended family. I think it's, you know, it's more so the adults. Like, for example, if you have you know, a foster parent that's taken care of you since 3 years old, they to them you're their child, right? And so obviously they feel this sense of protection and belonging, and this sense of ownership. And so there's kind of like a possessive instinct to want to be, you know, referred to as, you know, mom, dad after a while, right? And if that's not the case, then it's like, oh, like maybe they don't feel like I deserve that title, or I deserve that position, or whatever the case may be. But I mean, again, you know, one of the things that I think folks identify when you know, adoptive parents train to, you know, deal with young people who have traumas and who come from care and things of that nature is, it's not about you. You know, you have to follow the lead, like folks said on this call, of that young person, and really see things from their perspective. You know, I think the saying that blood is thicker than water is certainly true, but if you have absolutely no relationship with your blood family, then and that young person sees that foster parent who becomes adoptive parent as their parent, then that's how they see it. So it's oftentimes, I think, you know, it's often, yes, the adults who have a hard time finding where they fit with that young person. And I think that when that, you know, when the young person still has very deep connections with their blood family, and then they also have, you know, foster siblings who they call siblings, I think that it can get very confusing. But definitely, yeah, I think following the lead of the young person is a safe way to approach that, for sure. Yeah,
I think so too. And I think it's important that we don't create this need for a child or a youth to feel like they need to pick or choose, or, you know, hide anything of what they're feeling. So I'm just getting a question here. So someone, oh, sorry, it's maybe more of a comment. This is such an interesting conversation. Thank you. The Canada FASD Research Network has asked their community to use the term birthing parent instead of birth mother or biological mother, as not all people who give birth identify as female. How do you feel about this?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's one perspective. And I would probably, again, say that the voice of the child and the youth is missing from that perspective. And I hope that that's what this panel is really doing, is saying that that's the most important voice at the table.
Thanks, Cathy.
I'm not a fan of it. I'm gonna be honest, like birthing parent, it really takes me to the whole verb of it and thinking and it kind of, I know it's probably, well, of course it's well intentioned. So I'm not trying to offend anyone, but it just feels like we're right back into what we've just been talking about. And birthing parent, they're a parent.
Right.
So I struggle with that it almost feels like they've been relegated to just this thing that they were able to perform at one point.
Right. Like a time and a
To
space.
literally give birth.
Yeah.
Like that was it. You're the birthing parent, and then we handed you off, and it kind of ended there in a sense. So I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm sure a lot of thought goes into naming things and switching names, but I struggle with that, I think, even more than I do birth parent. I just think, like we've already kind of said and surmised, they're parents.
Absolutely. Yeah. Troy, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Michelle said. I think that it adds further confusion to the conversation. But again, I think that, because of the topic of perhaps sexuality and identity, I think that's something that, again, as that young person sort of grows up, they might identify themselves as something else when they get older. So it's on sort of, again, them to distinguish how they see the vocation of that parent and how they want to refer to them. But yeah, I think certainly, I think when you're addressing sort of educating practitioners and clinicians and folks who are working within the sector, I think that addressing birthing parent, I think, is I don't think it's necessary. Like, I think it adds more confusion. So yeah, I think that there's already the idea of different parents who are responsible for that child at a certain point, suffering from the division of hierarchy, and I think that might add further division. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, does anyone else want to touch on that?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, no.
No, go ahead, Ashley. Go ahead.
We're on the same topic. Like, I mean, for me, it sounds like it's inclusive of like the one parent who is the one giving birth, but the other parent was just like, yeah, like where
That's a
are
good
they?
point. Yeah, that's a good point, Ashley.
Yeah.
It really kind of dehumanizes too, I think, for me. Julie, what did you want to add?
And I was just going to say, like, that's a great, valuable point, actually, because I didn't think of it like that. But what I felt is I thought about the young people longing and wanting to reconnect, and we're giving it an action. So it invalidates the longing part. And so to me, there's a disconnect. And I would agree with everyone that I'm not, it wouldn't resonate well and true for our children and for ourselves.
Thanks, Julie. All right, so our next word that we wanted to discuss is resilience. So we have a definition here from Oxford Languages. So the first one is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. And the second, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape or elasticity. The word on its own is seen generally as a positive or a good trait to have, or to be seen as resilient. In the last few months, we've been part of conversations with those with a history of trauma who have shared the opinion that they would prefer that the word not be used when describing a person that has experienced trauma. The implication being that to show symptoms of trauma is weak, or when faced with adversity, one does not have much choice other than to withstand it, especially when that person had no power to choose for themselves. So I would really love to hear, Troy, your thoughts on what this word means to you.
This is a good one. Yeah, I mean, this is in some cases, this has been sort of a very 360 discussion. I think, again, for me, like, I've been a part of the discussion with many young people on youth councils and with different nonprofit organizations around, what it means to be resilient as a young person, especially as we distinguish the meaning of what it means to be a youth in care versus from care. Young people who were brought into care from a kind of a toddler stage or 3 or 4 years old versus folks who have spent just like sort of short snips of their life in care and have been through a few foster homes, and then of course either reconnected with a family member or got adopted. But I think, one of the things when you think about resilience is for me, I think about the idea of tokenism and young people not being able to own or control the narrative of their own story, especially as they age out of care. And I think a lot of young people are sort of looked at as, they just, oh, you just have a lot of experience, and oh, you're so tough, you're so resilient, you're just, they're just, it's just sort of looked at as something where they really didn't, again, like the definition said, didn't really have a choice. And I think a lot of young people, because they suffer from that trauma of being looked at as resilient, they often choose, even professionally, choose careers where they tend to want to, again, change that word and educate folks who are, I mean, not only youth in care who are coming after them, but folks who are working as social workers, and just to kind of help educate and change that word, whether it's coming up with new definitions, new ways to define who young people are and what their experience is and what their lived experience is, or just changing it altogether and stuff. So I think there's a lot of tokenism, I find, around that word, and it really, I think, by sort of putting every young person in a bucket and saying, oh, you're resilient, it really it almost takes value away from their individual experiences. And we use this word lived experience. Lived experience assumes that all young people have something to offer. They have, they're able to educate folks across many different sectors on their experience, and how to and how not to deal with young people, and how to refer to them, and all these labels and languages and all these things. And so I think that we really have to consider how we describe the experiences of young people in and from care, but also the effect that it has on folks who are looking from the outside in terms of their perception of youth in and from care as well.
That is such a good point. Ashley.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that too. Like, sometimes to me, it feels like the term resilient is being used by people who like don't have that lived experience, and it's sort of like, and not saying that everyone's doing it like intentionally, but sometimes to me it feels like they're saying, oh yes, you're resilient. You experienced some trauma, and that was that was in the past, and now you're doing well. Like, and they don't want to acknowledge like what that trauma was, or if it's ongoing and how it's still affecting you. They're like, it's all good now.
Yeah, so it feels really dismissive, kind of.
Yeah, and I understand sometimes like people are trying to mean it as a compliment, but it's also like essentially a tool to like dismiss like the past trauma and past harms that have happened and might still be ongoing.
Thanks for sharing that perspective, Ashley. Michelle, I know you're going to have some good things for us here. I'm going to tap on you.
No, because they've done a great job.
They have, yeah.
Troy and Ashley, and just from what Ashley was saying, it makes me think about it. It kind of gets people to be off the hook.
Right.
Because if they've been a part of the cause of whatever that is, the trauma or whatever it is, then they're fine. And it takes away from, I've never been a fan of it, because the conversation then just leaps to the next part. No one wants to sit in what actually might be happening. So the fact that you might have gone through things that have been traumatic and you're able to function, survive, doesn't mean I'm okay. Yeah. It means that I know through whatever it is that I have to do, or just inherently I keep going, but I don't think being in that survival mode is necessarily living. And therefore, that's kind of it. So if that young person or person could really benefit from someone believing that there's still something here, and support in getting counseling or whatever that healing looks like, then I think that's where that word can do a lot of damage. Because if you imagine, if a social worker is going, well, so-and-so is really resilient,
Yeah, and then it's
But I'm like, but
yeah.
wait a minute.
Yeah.
Can we back up? Because they're going to school, because they're doing that, it doesn't mean that whatever's happened still isn't impacting them. And maybe the trajectory of their life, it's right here because I'm just surviving, but it actually could be here
Mhm.
if they didn't have that. But they
Yeah.
did. So if we're not going to do anything or support them, or it kind of forces them, I think what Ashley's saying, to think that then I must be okay.
Right. So
And
surviving.
maybe this is
yeah.
this mode that I'm in. This is it.
Right.
Not actually knowing there might be another level that you actually could be, the way that you experience world and experience life. But that resilience is just, it's I find it a very dangerous word.
It's the difference of surviving versus thriving, right?
Right. And
I
it
think
makes
of
us
that
feel
picture.
good. It makes us feel good.
Yeah, I think of
Resilient.
that picture with the rock where it says, just because I carry it well doesn't mean it isn't heavy. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Brilliant, Courtney. Brilliant.
Troy, I see you've taken your
Yeah,
mic off mute again.
I just wanted to quickly add before Cathy and Julie jump in, that word can also, like, so when you think about a lot of like university applications and applications for scholarships with the foundation, like one of the questions, and Ashley can attest to this as well, I'm sure, is like, tell me about a time when, or what is resilience? Like, resilience is such a fundamental and foundational part of what can make or break a young person's career or educational experience or what have you. So again, I think that word has been it's been such a fundamental part of child welfare and social work landscape for such a long time that it's, I mean, again, it for some young people, it really it causes trauma, right? It's always looked at as a word to describe previous traumas, but it can actually cause more trauma from being eliminated from certain processes because you just either you don't see yourself as just being resilient, like you see yourself as so much more than that, as giving more to the world and so on. But again, if you're a youth in care and you want to apply for a scholarship or you want to receive mentoring or whatever it is, you have to kind of go through that process of putting yourself in that lens of, oh, I'm just resilient, I'm just a youth in care with lived experience, I'm just a foster, you know, like whatever the case may be. So I think it can actually increase the time it takes to recover from trauma, especially if you're aging out of care. And I think that folks who are not educated on what it means for that young person will not be able to have proper conversations where they can help young people heal from that kind of thing.
Thank you, Troy, and everyone else. I was just going to say, I find the word resiliency very dismissive, like others have said, and it doesn't acknowledge the developmental trauma. It doesn't acknowledge the losses or the pain. And so it brings into question why we're using that word, right? And when I really listen to youth, what they talk to us about are their healing journeys, how they're trying to heal, how they're trying to build themselves up, how they're trying to do things a little bit differently, how they're maybe taking it 1 minute at a time, not even 1 day at a time. And that's amazing in itself. And we need to celebrate that. We don't need to celebrate what we think resiliency is. It doesn't help.
That's a good point. It's just not helpful. It doesn't serve a purpose. Julie, do you have anything you wanted to add for that?
It's pretty hard to add to all of
That was pretty well covered, wasn't it?
I don't have much. I'm sitting here. But we recently had a speaker on our Snack and Chat who spoke about how youth who have been in touch with the child welfare should not have to be resilient. And that stuck with me because it's like, why are we why is resiliency being labeled and why is it important? What we need to do is look at what they need to heal and what could have been done to prevent some of the healing that may have happened over and over, even in child welfare, right? So I agree with everything, and I'm at loss of word other than that. It's a very it's nice for us to be able to look at a word that we may have considered valuable in times and now take a spin at it and change, because this is new for me to on this word, and even for myself as a person of identifying with it for so long, and suddenly look at it and go, maybe I didn't need that, you know.
Yeah,
So I think it's great for us to be discussing this word.
I agree. Thank you, Julie. Okay, so our final word for this evening, and I think we're going to have some really good conversations around this word as well, is openness. So openness within adoption is an important way to preserve and nurture meaningful relationships with family, friends, and individuals that are significant and prominent. Brings me back to our first topic and word, right? In a child or youth life, every person's journey is so unique, and I would love for us not to discuss the definition or different versions of openness, like agreements or orders, but rather the intent of openness, its meaning, and the impact on your journey. And if you didn't experience that openness, how do you think it could have impacted you? Julie, I want you to go first on this one, please.
All right. Well, I'm pretty passionate about openness. I have been from the beginning of our adoption journey of contemplating growing our family. I love people. I love people. I love to have a circle of people around me. And so for me, welcoming our children's loved ones, be it, you know, family, or as we talked about before, attachment. Can be foster families. It could be our children are still in touch with some of their childhood friends from before, and we foster those relationships as much as we can, because it is so important. I think that openness doesn't take anything away. When it's safe and it's possible, I think it doesn't take anything away from us, and I think it makes us richer. And at the end of the day, it makes our child or children's much more centered. They don't have to be tabooed about questions. I actually just wish that we had more of, because there's distance and all of that, we can't always see each other. But our home is open and always open to our family's circle of love and figures of attachment. And that to me is, I think, is key. Because if we foster strong attachment that they've built, we help them as they grow cultivate and maintain relationship, and that is something that is sometimes so difficult, because there's so many losses in that permanency. And I have to say, I don't even like the word adoption, because there's so many words that can be looked upon, or ways, you know. It's not only adoption, it's the people that come to us, the people are meaningful to us, the people are committed, you know, that will be there day, rain, night, whenever. And that's what family is. It's not just adoption or kinship or customer care. It's the people are meaningful. So for me, openness, I think, is a gift to us who are in the parenting journey, because we'll learn and we'll grow from that. But I think for our children and for the entire family, I think it's a beautiful, yeah, it's beautiful. I love it.
I just wanted to say, I think it's a lifelong commitment too. It's truly a bridge for our children for their past, their present, and their future. And I just want to mention siblings, because many of us did not adopt sibling groups, and yet our children are part of sibling groups that were separated through the child welfare system. And so also honoring reunification of siblings through openness. And as you know, young adults or teenagers or children is such a beautiful gift for everybody within that piece. And it's something that I feel really strongly about. Siblings should never be separated, but when they are, openness allows that journey to happen for them in a really supported way. And that's something that's very special for everybody who's involved.
Okay. Ashley, do you have any thoughts?
I guess when we were looking when we like got the list of panel questions, like part of it, I mean, there was like a question about like how like openness would have impacted us, but also like if you didn't experience it, how could it have impacted you? And so given I was like apprehended at birth, and like don't have those memories of my parents, and then got adopted when I was also quite young and placed in a closed adoption, that sort of openness wasn't there. And I know now, like after I did a freedom of information request for my files, like my First Nation did ask for there to be like communication and that there'd be updates on me, because they didn't have the funding to take care of me, even though they really, really wanted to. And then I was placed in that closed adoption and none of that happened. So I guess, I mean, and like, first of all, like, I don't think Indigenous children should be adopted out or fostered out of their communities at all. But in my case, like openness might have actually like helped me be connected, or like remain connected or have some level of connection. And I'm like sad I didn't get that. And I'm sad too that like I didn't get the opportunity to, like, for example, meet like my grandmother who passed away when I was about 6 or 7 years old. I didn't even know that she had requested as well to be like included in some sort of like open agreement and communication, until I got my freedom of information request back. So I mean, I think it could like openness is really, really important in this. And I mean, I guess too, like, I mean, I'm pretty white passing, but like we all like we know I'm adopted. Like I don't look like my adopted parents like at all. So like it's very clear that I'm adopted. And I really don't see why, like assuming that everything's safe, why that openness couldn't have been there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Troy, do you have any feelings, or what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everyone said so far. I would bring it down to, you know, the I think the opportunity with adoption and connecting with that young person is continuing to investigate attachment cycles and love languages. I think those are extremely important. You know, how a young person will sort of open up to you and relate to you, and you know, are they someone who shares a lot of their thoughts? Can they trust you? I think one of the things that's most difficult for young people is, in terms of the themes of lived experience, is trust and loyalty. For a young person, for example, who has traveled in and out of foster homes or group homes, they haven't had relationships or people that they can depend on for long periods of time. And so one of the things that ends up happening is when they reach permanency or when they reach adoption, they just instinctively, they're not used to someone always caring for them or always looking out for them, or you know, saying, are you okay, or can I make you breakfast, or can I, whatever the case may be. And so they often become sort of resistant to that sort of care, and that's that can be traumatic for the parent, as you know, for the young person. So I think, you know, just from an age, you know, from an educational standpoint, continuing to educate adoptive parents as to why it's so important to investigate the experiences of that young person, and why it's important to learn about them, learn about their experiences, and really understand how they, what they want and how they relate to you, and you know, if they want to be left alone after school or after work, then do that, right? Cater to sort of their needs and look at, you know, why it's important for them, and just kind of affirm them in that behavior.
Thank you.
Troy, what you just said is things that awaiting parents need to hear. They need to hear, because it's so hard when, you know, you go into this and you think, oh, my love is going to, no, your love might be too much love. So, just to learn how to pace yourself, right? Just slowly. So thank you for those beautiful words, because they really resonate. And I hope that if we have a waiting prospective parents, that they pay attention to that, because it's not about us. The rejections that, again, it's about being the adult. But it's not about, it's not about us if our children are worried about the people they love, the people are meaningful to them. And because our children's more and more and more are coming to us older, so they have so many experiences and knowledge and connections that they've created before they come to us. We really need to be patient and walk slowly. And I remember, and it took me a long time to understand it, because I'm guilty. I didn't have the network around me. But I remember one of my child said, "It's just too much love." And I was like, "What do you mean?" But that's what you resonated with me when you said that. It's just all about that. So thank you.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Well, there's two things. So just what Julie and I think what Troy started with, the too much love. I remember years ago, I'm going back a long ways, when I was working frontline, and we had placed this one youth in a home, and she had come from a home that there was alcohol, there was a lot of challenges there, and she actually asked to come into care. And she was placed in this home for the first 3 weeks. It was going great. She was placed in a family, and then things went downhill quickly. And I remember we took her, myself and another worker took her to Tim Hortons down the street, and we're just like, "What's going on?" And she said, "It's too much. It's too much." And it was literally after about a half an hour, 45 minutes. And the good thing, we did have a good relationship with her, and said, "What's too much?" Family. Like it just became, she knew how to take care of her younger sister, even though she was young, in the situations that weren't great. When one of their parents was struggling with substances, she knew how to do those things. But now to be in a home where someone's able to take care of you, and you just get to be this teenage kid, it was too much. So in the end, she said she wanted to go to group home. But going back to openness, I always struggle when I think there are some people who have that the openness has to be with the perfect people, right? And I don't know, but I don't have, all the people in my family are not perfect. Yeah. And some relationships are a little challenging, and some you might just see during certain celebrations, and some you might see more often than others. But they kind of shape and inform who you are, and learning how to negotiate those relationships in those situations, as long as people are safe. Is part of your development, and how to negotiate things later. And it's the thing we joke about. Remember when Uncle so-and-so was drunk at that thing? Remember that? Like there's just, or remember they said that? Like that was bad. That just shapes kind of, so it's, I always have to say to people, I don't care if they're perfect. Are they a threat of some sort? Like they're not going to be at this family's home for Sunday dinner every Sunday. So really to look at that. And then also with siblings, I get worried when there's an age gap and people say, "Well, he's 10. What are they going to do with the 2-year-old?" And I'm thinking, yeah, but that age gap is like nothing when they're in their 30s. Yeah. It's nothing. So you see it now. So, I mean, I look at myself, one of my siblings, there's a 15 years. I was an adult practically when this child was born. And yet we did have a very much adult, older sibling. But now, as I'm older and she has kids, I have a child, it's all leveled out. In some regards, I'm just like, yeah, you're more mature than me sometimes. But I worry about that when it's so easily, it's easy to sever it. It's easy to sever it, or they're not getting along. I'm thinking, well, that was sibling rivalry, and now you've turned it into something. Right. Then it's just that. Then deal. Yeah. I'm pretty sure if you called me when I was 12, take my brother, right? Like take him. Yes. It just depending on how we were getting along or not getting along. And there's times when we were really little, we really got along, and there's times when we really didn't get along. So then to go back and say, well, who do you want to live with? I'm thinking if someone had made that or allowed me to make a choice back then, not thinking far reaching, what would that look like and how would that alter things? So really for people to be open to the openness of those relationships and not hold them under, I think I don't know if it's a Eurocentric type of whatever middle class view of what this should look like. And we want to give them perfection. And that you create this world that's supposedly so perfect that they can't function when they encounter people who aren't perfect.
Right. And I think too, to explore like what is safe and what is unsafe. Like really when like, why does this feel unsafe to you? Yeah.
And does your presence as the parent make it more safe? Like there's some family members I wouldn't leave my child with. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like it's a big family. Like there's just some you're like, they can come for dinner, but really? Are we really going to just hand them off for the weekend? No.
Yeah.
But somehow we figure that out. Somehow we negotiate that, but we have a different, people have a different standard or different expectation. And as kids grow, that person who they might not have had that kind of that you thought was perfect, they have a lived experience that's really going to help inform this child when they're like 20. Now we can sit down and have a real conversation and we can connect in a different way. When you were 10, I really didn't know what to do with you. Like, right. But now I seem to serve more of a purpose, meaning for you right now, but we didn't sever that. So that was always there. That person was always a possibility and attainable.
Well, and I think remembering too that these people and these relationships are part of our children's identities as well, right? So if we're denying an individual or a situation and basically labeling it as not okay, the underlying message to our children is yes.
On some level, you're not okay because you're related to this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. That's really, yeah. Whew. Okay. All right. So that was our main conversation. So one other thing that we've kind of been exploring throughout this month is as we're considering the power of words and language, are there certain words or phrases that we need to unlearn and take out of the conversation? Words where the meaning or intent may now be understood differently and be unintentionally causing harm to adoptees and those with lived experience. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. I mean, I feel like we all kind of came to that conclusion with the word resilience. Is there any other word that anyone has top of mind that
I'm just going to throw out the word real parents and real siblings, because those are really loaded terms. And I'll share something that my daughter said many years ago when she was 8, when asked by a friend, well, is that really your mom? Because, she doesn't look like you. And she said, well, I had a foster parent, I had a nanny in the orphanage, I have my mother who gave birth to me, and I have my mom, and they're all real. And I thought that was such a great answer for a child. And again, kids get it, right? And for siblings, but is that your real sibling? Well, they're siblings, right? They're very real to each other, whether they're related by blood or not. So those are terms that I think we really have to, the person who's asking needs to ask themselves, perhaps, why is that important information to have? Because if you're just curious, kind of quell that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Michelle.
And they place it on, it's like on a hierarchy, especially the sibling one. It's really, that one really bothers me. Could be in a case conference and someone saying, well, that's their half sibling. That's someone from the foster home. And I'll be like, that's their sibling. Can we just take out all of those other words you've attached to it? Because somehow they might have had a sibling that there was their blood sibling, but maybe they actually have a greater connection and more meaningful based on circumstance connection with the person who was in the same foster home. They were never adopted together, but that is their sibling, and they will still have that relationship into adulthood. But it's people who need to categorize. And I think sometimes, because then we can determine, will they be a part of openness? We can determine, will they be, do we really need to place them together? Because it's kind of hard.
Right.
Because that's just their half sibling. And in their minds, no, we're growing up together. We have that connection that it's just, who's it back to again? Like who, because the child's not saying it, and who gave them the language if they are.
Yeah. And who is it hard for? who do we want to have a hard time in this situation, right? Yeah. Yes, Ashley. You
Yeah,
don't have to
another
put your hand up.
Okay, literally put the hand up. Yeah, I guess when we were talking about like the terms like birth parent, first parent, in the, and I can't remember if you said it, but in the like questions that we were given before the panel, there was the term parent of origin, and honestly that just reminds me of like your country of origin. Like it's really,
Right.
yeah, it's just, yeah, I really don't, I personally
that
really
one,
don't
yeah.
like that term. Yeah, it sounds like, I don't know, they're just like, they're not like a person, they're like some like thing, some entity that produced you. Yeah, so that one I'd be very happy to see.
I appreciate that
It's
feedback.
like a superhero thing. Don't they have like an origin story?
origin
So you're like
story.
the parent of origin, like, because you know their parents disappear or they're orphaned or
Right.
something, right? So that when you
Yes.
said that, I just thought, oh, it's you're the parent of origin, the origin story.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard parent of origin as much. I have heard original parent, but that is a good one to maybe remove. Thank you, Ashley, for pointing that out.
One that that just really doesn't land at all with me is when we say a child has been given up for adoption. I can't think that the parent is just doing this, and I cannot think about the child just thinking about being given up. Like I think that this terminology needs to be radiated, like removed, never asked again, never said again, because it is so difficult. There's so much drama in that, and the choices and the pain and the grief that yeah. So that is my big. Real parent is also a trigger, or real sibling is a trigger, but the action of that terminology that I just mentioned is really not landing well with many of us in the field, I think.
Yeah.
They can hear you.
Can I jump in again on that one too?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, I mean, and like, I think this is like probably for Indigenous communities. I also imagine maybe like Troy would have some really great things to say on it too, but like with like the colonial history of this like country and all of the awful things, like, I mean, from like colonization through like residential schools and the 60s scoop, and like TV sanatoriums is another one that I hear from a helper. Like, when I think about all that and how it has led up to like where I am today, I truly can't say that like the woman who gave birth to me, that like she like as like my parent, like that she truly had any sort of choice to give me up for adoption. Like that's like hundreds of years of like history and like harm that like culminated in like where she was when she got pregnant, and like where she was when it was time to give birth to me. And also similar for my father as well, because I mean, he's half white, but he's also half Chinese, and that history there too. Yeah.
Thanks, Ashley. That's a really, really good point. Trying to think. I should have put some thought into some words that I don't love. Okay. All right. Well, this conversation, I want to thank everybody on the panel, because wow, some really good thoughts to take away and some really good nuggets for our community to consider. So thank you all for your time and your voice. And with that, I guess we'll all say good night.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks,
Courtney,
Michelle.
and everybody else.
Everyone.
Does anyone have any
Thank you.
closing thoughts before we sign off?
I think we just demonstrate like words.
Right.
The power of
the
words
power,
and how they
yeah.
can, like, I think this is like, I thought this was a great topic. And I'm sure some people thought, really? But I thought it was a great topic because how much harm or how much love can be in a word,
Yeah.
and how it's impacted, just people trying to belong or having the right to belong to other people, a community, and how words can impact, and innocently using the words
Right.
can still cause huge harm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just actually gonna add something just because we have a few more minutes.
Yes, we do. We have time. Yes, we do. Yeah.
Good. So November is Adoption Awareness Month. And I alluded to it a little earlier that adoption is just not the only way, and it shouldn't be. So we've been talking with our partners across Canada, and it's because it doesn't land well. Like, why are we just celebrating adoption? There's children that have various type of permanency, and so I would love for us when we meet next year and talk during this month that we have renamed, that we are bold, Canadian, Ontarian, whatever, and that we find a different way of naming the Adoption Awareness Month to truly reflect our children who have been in care, who have been, I love the way you said it, Troy, they traveled in and out. And, I want to be able to celebrate all of our children's. And so I don't know how it's landing because we didn't talk about this together, but I think that it would be wonderful that we really find a terminology. We don't need to be followers. We just need to be innovators and daring and be, truly finding and working with our youth alongside in finding the right terminology that they will feel in welcomed and supported in that. And so I think that, whomever is watching, all of you as well, if we can think and start toying around that, because I think it would be wonderful to truly look at a different name that will unite us, because as I said, like kinship, customary care, moral, families of choice, like meaningful adult, we have like siblings that are raising their siblings.
Well, more inclusive language, right? We really need to find more inclusive language.
So, because parenting is a lifelong journey of various people that can come through it as well. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Julie. That's really a good point and thought. All right. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in tonight.
Everybody.
Thank you to all our panelists. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.